What if your calendar wasn't just appointments, but actually data about your energy and identity? Danielle McGeough is on the show today to flip the script on how you view planning and goal setting. She shares how tiny actions, playful planning, and purpose filled rituals can build capacity, create margin in your life, and make more space for the things you want. If you've ever wanted your manifestations to feel more playful and expansive, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, the show where we tackle the taboo topics of money and manifestation. I'm your host, Jenny Schultz, former 9-to-5 grinder who ditched the status quo and went all in on creating a life I love. Yes, I use manifestation. Yes, I took action. And yes, I created a 7-figure net worth before turning 40. Every week, I'll bring you inspiring stories with money mavens and manifestation masters. From learning how to make more, save more, and grow your wealth to unlocking the power of manifesting your dream life. I am so excited to play in this space with you. Let's jump into creating a life you love. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, Danielle.
And thank you so much for having me.
I am pumped to have you on the show today because, as everyone knows, a big piece of manifestation is taking action. And you are an expert in taking action, I feel. So I would love to share with the listeners just who you are and what your story is.
You bet. So I am a mom of 2 wild kiddos. They're 7 and 10. And I'm also a full-time professor. I teach things like creativity, storytelling, and identity, start a podcast, fun stuff like that. And I kind of stumbled into running my own business. And a lot of that was I found myself in a muck moment, a moment that was really hard. And I had felt like I really had lost myself. So I had just had my first kiddo. My second kiddo was on the way. I had just earned tenure. And that was a huge milestone for me. I always like to say I was not the smart kid growing up, I was the weird kid. So getting a PhD felt like this thing that, ooh, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to work twice as hard as everyone else. That's what I told myself. And I did, and it worked. And I found myself, though, at this place where I didn't really know what I enjoyed anymore. I felt incredibly flat and overwhelmed all at once. And I decided I need to make learning about myself a priority. I did that through taking action, but they were oftentimes really small actions.
Let's dig into that because sometimes people overthink both the taking action as it has to be some big, bold thing, right? Define action. What did that look like for you?
So I love reflection, but I also think that reflection needs to be paired with action and experimentation. And so for me, I found myself in the middle of the night, I wasn't sleeping, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get some stuff done. So I pulled out my planners and I realized that my planning, my time management wasn't just about controlling my time. It was also me collecting data on myself. And I started to get really interested in what are the patterns that I'm seeing and how I'm spending my time and where am I feeling really good energy and where am I feeling resistance? Where does it feel like it's draining me? And I started to think about my calendar as actually a place where I had data. And then I would take that data to go, okay, what are some tiny adjustments that I can make this week? Maybe it's realizing that I actually really like listening to a podcast and making dinner. And so, how could I really savor that moment? Or I haven't been spending as much time with my husband. Could we just take a 30-minute mini date on Friday before we pick up the kids from school? And I just started making really small decisions about how I was spending my time and learning from those actions to help make new decisions about actions that I would take.
So you're intentionally creating space for those feel good things, which then I'm going on assumptions here, just based on my reality. Did that feel like then when you had to do the work parts of your calendar, you had more energy or more headspace to be able to step into those?
Absolutely. And, that's kind of a wild thing if you haven't noticed or experienced that before. Because I think that you tell yourself that doing more is just going to feel like more, more pressure, more busy, more overwhelm. When the truth is that adding more of the things that light me up gave me the energy, gave me the capacity. It was capacity building to be able to hold the space for some of the stuff that you'd still have to just do some things as an adult, right?
Right.
That have to get done. But even those sorts of things, you do start to learn how to think creatively about how to navigate those things.
And you obviously are embodying that now because you've got your podcast, you've got your business, you're a mom to two youngish still kids who probably need a lot of hands-on direction. And I'm curious too, how did you embody that new mindset into your business?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, my business was something that I kind of started by accident. So, I was doing this like mindful planning in the middle of the night with stickers because I had a student in one of my courses give a presentation on decorative planning and how she used it to help manage her anxiety. And I was like, ooh, I'm not that artsy fartsy, but I can make things look pretty with stickers. And so I started just stickering my planner, and there's something about that process that would slow me down and give me the space to also reflect on all of the appointments I was putting in. And it made it pretty and it made it feel like self care instead of the control that sometimes I would take to my planning practices. I would be like trying to control my life, right? And instead, it felt more cozy. It was delightful. So I just got really excited about this. And I was like, well, I'm a teacher at heart. So if something works for me, I just want to share it with everybody. I started hosting these like planning parties. At first, at the university that I teach at the start of each semester, I'd have planning parties and I'd bring stickers and everybody could bring their syllabi and we would start cultivating our and designing our semester. And then word got out and I started being asked to do this some in the community. And then I was like, ooh, I have so many things that I have to say about this. And it's kind of embarrassing because I actually have been studying things like ritual and change and identity for the last 20 years of my career, but I hadn't necessarily connected those things. It was like, oh, I have this hobby over here, and then I got like the work here, and it's so serious. And I didn't realize that I was actually doing identity work and personal transformation through these planning parties. And that's when I started my podcast and did everything like that. But I do think that because of that, when I realized, oh, I think I kind of have a business here, that I very real was like, hey, I'm not going to reiterate the bad patterns that I've had in other aspects of my work life. That if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it on my terms. I'm going to do the things that light me up. I do have control over this. And I need to take ownership and responsibility of what I'm creating with this. I do think that from the get-go, I always wanted to make something that felt good.
Yeah, I love that so much because people often in everything, they're going for the big goals. They're trying to manifest something. They're got these big dreams they're going after, but it feels big. And they're probably telling themselves what you told yourself at first, oh, I have to work really hard to go after this thing. So to bring in the element of play into it that you're doing, I love that so much. And I think there is such value in that for people that are listening. How can you go into planning out your next semester, your next quarter, your next milestone that you're going for with intention and injecting that element of play in that? So, can you dig into these planning parties a bit more? Because I am so intrigued by this.
I have a vision goal setting process where each letter in the word vision has a part to it. And one is connecting to our values and doing some introspection and thinking about, well, where is the self care going to be built into this? And what is my capacity in this season of my life? And can I just dream for a bit and take inventory of all the different things. And then from there, I like to choose a word of the year or a word of the quarter or a word of the month that really becomes a filtering. So it's not just inspirational, but it's also a filter to help me narrow all of these exciting dreams that I've just cultivated and stirred up so that I can finally name and narrow what it is that I want to manifest. I think the most empowering part of manifestation for me, but also maybe the hardest part, is letting go of the how sometimes and letting the how emerge. If I can really connect to the what, to the desire, to the goal, as a planner, I want to force it into
Oh.
place. What I think is interesting though is that if you can get really, 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 really clear and take your time to really set the right goal for right now, and that is inspired and connected, that the how really will emerge. And all you need is practices in place that keep you connected.
Well said. What kind of practices do you like to do? And do you leave space in your calendar then for the path to unfold?
Ooh, such a beautiful question. So first, I am a huge fan of rituals. I love habits. Habits are good, but I think that in a world where many of us are searching for meaning and connection, that we need to get really clear around where do we want to have habits that are purposefully designed to eventually become unconscious. They're automatic. And where do we want to have practices that actually invite presence, that keep us present and help us transition from one state to another. And rituals are infused with meaning. I have a morning ritual that includes a little bit of my spiritual practice, a little bit of journaling, as well as that is when I do my planning, which usually involves me really thinking about what are the three things that if I could do today, I would feel good by the end of the day. And what I notice is that that ritual is wildly grounding for me, but it is also a place to that does create space for inspired action because I think between the spiritual practice and the journaling, there are ways in which I get in touch with what's the lesson that I'm learning right now? What is this day asking of me? And also, what do I need to receive today? Or be open to receiving. So I think that that practice in of itself is a space for things to emerge and unfold. I'm also a huge fan of margin though, like making sure I really dislike busyness. And I'm actually a huge fan of boredom. I believe that boredom makes us brilliant. There's a wonderful book called Bored and Brilliant by Manoush Samadori. I recommend it. But I do try to create margin in my schedule for spontaneous play, for things to emerge. But I'm also like a normal person with lots of responsibilities, and sometimes that all goes to crap.
That is so true. And thanks for sharing that book. That is something that I have been having a conversation with my children about a lot lately when they're like, I'm bored. I'm like, good. Go sit down and then tell me what your brain has come up with to do, or go to your room and now tell me what you see in front of you to do. I'm going to check that book out. And that's so true. Sometimes things pop up in our schedules that we haven't accounted for. Things happen, especially being a mom with littles. And to give yourself that ritual in the morning of being able to reassess for your top three things for the day, there's such freedom in that. Sure, you might have planned to do certain things in your mind, but then giving yourself the flexibility there to be like, actually, today I've got to flip this on its head. That has to get bumped to another day. I think that has to be a really freeing feeling that comes from that.
Absolutely. And I've also given myself permission to think about those daily top three as both things I need to do, but also ways that I want to show up. I'll sometimes call them to do goals and to be goals. And when I think about that in relation to manifestation and sort of thinking about how do we keep a vibration that is attracting, I like to think about today, I have some meetings on my schedule that I'm really not looking forward to, but I got to do them because I'm a big girl. And so, how do I just go, how do I want to be at those meetings? How do I want to show up? What is the energy that I want to bring to them? Because I may not be able to control all the time what I'm doing or what I'm not doing, but I can control how I show up and move through those things. And so that has been a really liberating thing too, to go like, all right, I just have to do some things today, but how do I do those things in a way that feels aligned with who I want to be?
That sounds really powerful. I just want to flip back to you and the creative aspect of planning out your calendar. So, are you doing this in a paper planner? And is there ways to do it in a digital planner?
Yeah, so I am a hybrid planner, meaning that I play in digital spaces as well as on paper. And what I will say is because I am a full-time professor, I run a business, I have family members. I do find that digital planners are an easier way to share our appointments and schedules with other people. You know, that back and forth of, hey, when are you available to meet? Well, when am I available to meet? Like, can we do this? It is easier to have something where it's like, well, look at my calendar, find what's available, let's go. So I find digital calendars really great for navigating my appointments. When it comes to my to-do list, when it comes to all the tasks that need to get done in a day, I find it really helpful for me to put pen to paper. I use a paper planner where once a week I look at my calendar and I actually rewrite down my appointments for the week. And then from there, I think about my to-do list and I think about, well, where do these different tasks need to go? Which day should they occur on based on the other appointments that I've already committed to, based on when deadlines exist and things like that. And so I do that once a week. And for me, there's something about the rewriting. Some people might see that as inefficient, but I will say one, it helps my brain remember in a different way than when it's in my digital calendar. The other thing is it does also help me go, Danielle, you have 4 meetings on this day. You don't have tons of time to do other tasks. You need to get real about how much can actually get done given your current commitments. When else this week could those tasks get done then?
Mm.
And I think it helps me just be honest and accountable to myself about what really is possible. And there's something about writing too that I think creates the space to really slow down and think about, is this where I want to put this? Do I need to make any adjustments? I do that once a week and then daily I revisit things and somebody gets sick or an appointment got moved or a deadline came up that I wasn't expecting and you have to shuffle. You have to make the adjustments. And so that's where on a daily basis, that quick check-in, it gives me the flexibility to adjust.
Yeah, I love that so much. And in there, you said getting real about what you can fit in, because I know talking to other moms, there's almost this guilt and this shame that I didn't get enough done today. I had this to-do list, and it's a to-do list, and I got derailed because I had to go stop by my kids' school and do stuff. Like things come up that you didn't really account for, yet they don't take into consideration being a mom sometimes is an all-day job. Like obviously it's an all-day job, but sometimes it's an all-day task, right? Sometimes you don't get to check out of that job to be allowed to go do other things. So I think in there has to be some grace of, like you said, getting real with the actual time we have outside of some of our roles to be able to do other things.
Yes. Yes. And I want to go back to and say digitally, you can get digital planners that allow you to have digital stickers. And so
Oh.
you can actually sticker digitally if that's your jam. So you can kind of drag the stickers to different places. I still prefer stickers on my paper planner. And I'll decorate in a spurt. Sometimes I'll do it once a week. Other times I'll be like, I want to do 3 months at a time and just sticker everything. It's both a creative outlet, it's a way that I reflect as I do it. But I do think that we need to have ways of not only planning for creating flexibility within our structures, but also giving ourselves credit for all of the things that we do. So, you were just saying all of these amazing women who at the end of the day feel like, I don't know if I did anything. And you're like, you haven't stopped moving. Of course, you did a million things. And what I love about the process of planning too is that you can look at your digital calendar, you can look at your paper planner, and there's just evidence of all of this labor that sometimes is invisible. And it's so empowering to make that invisible stuff visible.
And talk about empowering. I'd love for you to share what your biggest piece of advice is for somebody to go out and truly create a life they love.
Ooh. My first thing is that it's possible. You have agency. You can create the life that you love. And learning about yourself is so important. And so really just having practices, rituals in place that connect you to yourself, where you get to learn about yourself, because you are evolving and changing all of the time. And to have those regular ways of connecting and to knowing yourself, because when you know yourself, then you can create a life that you truly love.
Thank you for sharing that. That was beautifully said. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners where they can reach out and carry on this conversation with you.
You bet. Come on over to plangoplan.com. That's my website. You can learn about me there, but you can also listen to my podcast by the same title, Plan Go Plan. And I tell stories all the time on LinkedIn. So that's where I practice my storytelling. So if you connect to me there, that's where you're going to get lots of juicy stories.
Fun. Thank you so much. I will link that all in the show notes. And thanks for joining me on the show today, Danielle.
Thank you, Jen. This was a delight.
Thank you for hanging out with me on the Manifestation and Money podcast. If you're ready to take your manifesting to the next level, come join me inside the Manifestation Playground. It's an intentional space I've created to explore, experiment, and expand your manifestation potential. It's where the magic happens. So head on over to www.manifestationplayground.ca to find out more. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep taking aligned action. Cheers to creating a life you love.